I pressed charges against my brother-in-laws after they jumped me, and now my wife is begging me to drop them to save our family, but divorce is starting to sound like the better option. First, some backstory. I, 33M, met my wife, 33F, in college. It was a long-term physical relationship that turned serious at the end of our senior year. After graduation, I didn't have plans, so I decided to move to her hometown, a major southern city. I didn't know anybody, so we were together 24/7 and moved in together within a year. During this time, I met her family a few times. She had a huge extended family where her mom, Sharon, was the matriarch. Her dad died in a workplace accident, and her mom got a lot of money. She was smart and invested and is doing well. All of Sharon's siblings and nieces and nephews look to her for advice on all major life decisions. She's paid for school, weddings, and helped start businesses. My wife has 2 brothers who I always got along with. We would hang out independent of my wife a few times a year. We got married after 3 years, and when my son was born, Sharon bought us a house 3 blocks from hers. We had lived in a downtown loft-style apartment, and this was honestly a relief. But with the house came Sharon constantly being in my life. Coming in the house unannounced, unsolicited advice, and snide remarks at my expense. Eventually, 18 months later, we had a blow-up fight and I moved my family across town to an apartment. My wife was pissed and our relationship has deteriorated. At this point, Sharon hates me and has turned most of their family against me. I didn't see or go to any of her family events for over a year. My wife still saw her family, but because I wasn't invited and they were over 30 minutes away, it was much less. Sharon went from seeing her grandson almost every day to once a month. So her hate for me went through the roof. The incident. My wife had to work and I was asked to take my son to his cousin's birthday party. The party was at Sharon's house, and if it wasn't my son's first cousin, 6 months apart, I would have said no. It was tense the moment I walked in the house. The father of the birthday boy, brother-in-law, greeted me, but no one else spoke to me. I didn't mind and sat in the corner on my phone. This apparently pissed off Sharon because I was being rude. An argument ensues and I announce I'm leaving with my son. Sharon said, "You can go, but my grandbaby is staying." At this point I lost my cool and started cursing her out. I woke up on the front lawn. Apparently my 2 brother-in-laws beat the crap out of me in front of my kid. 2 of her cousins were helping me up and told me just to leave. I immediately called the police and said I was assaulted and my child was kidnapped. Police came and both brothers were arrested. Sharon lost her cool on the police and my wife drove up as her mother was being arrested for refusing to release my son. Her mom was eventually released, but her brothers were arraigned on assault charges. The father of the birthday boy had an assault charge from college, so he is facing some serious consequences. My wife is mad at everyone but asked me drop the charges. I not only refused, but also got restraining orders for all 3 of them. Her mother isn't allowed to be near our kid and her brothers have court dates early next year. Last month she moved out of the house and we are now headed for divorce. Yesterday she came with one last offer, for us to move cities and start over. But only if I drop the charges on her brothers and remove the restraining order on her mom. I told her I would think about it, but I think I would rather get divorced. I honestly want to keep my family, but I don't believe she'll ever abandon her family for me. If I drop charges now, I doubt I can bring them back later. Am I in the wrong for not trying to save my family? Edit. This blew up overnight. My wife's cousin DM'd me because she found it. She was there that day and told me to add some more context because her family is getting railed in the comments. She's right, so here are a few more things. I don't think anyone is evil in this situation. Everyone loves Sharon and her advice except me. She's not a mean person, but we are polar opposites in many ways. My wife is the baby and only girl, so I'm sure that has a lot to do with our conflict. Sharon losing her cool on the police was uncharacteristic, and even I was surprised. My wife is a great mom and partner, but her inability to be independent of her mom's influence is our issue. She is mad at her brothers and isn't talking to either at the moment. She's also mad at her mom for starting the argument and refusing to release our son. She's just trying to find a middle ground. I genuinely think she hopes a fresh start can save our marriage. Until we moved into that house, I would say our relationship was good. As far as her brothers and the assault, I remember the first hit, but I was dazed immediately. The last thing I remember was flailing like a child while getting hit a few more times. What I don't remember is my kids screaming to stop hitting my daddy and them picking me up and dropping me on the lawn like trash. I have to acknowledge that my pride hurt more than my bruises. I genuinely liked both her brothers, and to be fair, fuck you and BTCH came out of my mouth when I cursed out Sharon. I'm not 100% innocent. This is the South, so the police even said, "What did you expect to happen?" I don't know if I stopped pursuing this it would continue or not. Update, 4 months later. Hello, let me start by saying thank you to the supporters and screw you to the assholes. Reddit is one hell of a place to get perspective on things. Only place you could be called a good father and cuck in the same thread. I've been wanting to write and update and answer questions for a while, but after my original post, many Reddit lawyers reached out and told me to stop talking immediately. Since things were very uncertain and my divorce wasn't settled, I decided to not respond or update anything until things calmed down a bit. A lot has happened to so many people involved, so I think I'm just going to break it down by person. Me, I moved back to the West Coast, where I am originally from. I decided to move forward with the divorce, so I moved home. Furthermore, I had nothing left for me in that city, as I only had a few friends, my son, and a lot of bad memories. My ex and son cried a lot the day I left and that hurt my soul, but it was best for all parties involved. So I moved back home to be around my family and my support system. I got a good paying job, and I'll be subletting a 2-bedroom apartment starting next month. My son spent the holidays with me, staying with my parents, and I plan to see him on Easter. Going forward and laid out in our custody agreement, my son will stay with his mother until he is 12. I'll get him Easter and summers, and we'll switch Christmas and Thanksgiving every year. When he's 12, and needs a father figure, he'll come live with me until he is 18. I talk to my son every day on the phone for at least an hour, and I'll try to fly out there a few times a year. I can't shake the feeling that a piece of me is missing, and wish it was just my son, but I miss my wife too. My ex-wife, so the divorce is basically settled, and I obviously didn't move away with her. In the end, she saw my post and saw the comments and realized that she shouldn't have asked me to stop pursuing the case. She asked again, saying we could move and just get away from her family. Too much had happened, and our relationship was a shell of what it was. We both said and did things we forgave but can't forget. I wish this was a movie and I could just say love conquers all, or screw her, she is evil, but that isn't real life. I'm torn between both loving this person and knowing we aren't right for each other. While she didn't want to move forward with the divorce, she didn't fight me on it either. We were able to settle everything without lawyers and only use them for paperwork and fine details. We talk daily because of our son, and she says she is doing well, but last time I FaceTimed her I can tell she isn't eating. My sister said it's post-breakup hotness, whatever that means, but she looks more sick than hot. She hasn't spoken to her brothers since that day, and blames them for a lot of what happened. She and Sharon's relationship is also very strained, and they barely talk as well. Ironically, she is hardly speaking to the family she was so desperately trying to keep together. I honestly wish she would talk to her family again, because I worry about her a lot. People were very mean to my ex-wife, saying she was a terrible mother and wife. I think she lives for and would die for her family, and all her actions were to keep us together. She told me her 2 biggest regrets were moving into Sharon's house and moving out of our apartment. Those 2 actions caused most of our problems. She is a great mother to my child and I will always have her back. The brothers, I didn't expect much as far as punishment in this case. They both plead out to a simple assault, which only had minimal consequences. Both brothers spent a night in jail, got fines and anger management. The older brother had a prior incident that I mentioned in the earlier post. It was a bar fight in his early 20s, and he hit a guy with a bottle and got an assault charge. Since that case was over 15 years ago, and he's married, pillar of the community, etc., he was given probation for a year and that was the end. Both brothers have partners in life and the oldest one is married. I've known his wife for many years, and we've always been friendly. Because of the restraining order, both spouses reached out on behalf of the brothers to speak to me. I barely knew the younger brother's girlfriend, but since I knew the wife, I spoke to her. She said both brothers regretted their decision, and she asked me to lift the restraining order and not to pursue charges. We had a brief conversation, but I simply told her I don't forgive her husband and brother-in-law, and I'm moving forward with both. As we ended the conversation, I told her not to call me again, and I haven't heard from either brother since. I don't know anything beyond what the ex tells me, and she isn't speaking to them. Sharon, so I did have it out with Sharon, and it went about as well as you can imagine. Here is a little backstory to our relationship. Let's start by saying my ex and her family are devout Christians who go to church weekly. I'm a lapsed Catholic who goes to church 3 times a year. I live a very moral and ethical life, but my belief system isn't centered on the church. Furthermore, I consider myself a moderate liberal, and their family is moderate conservatives. For example, I'm down for the Second Amendment, and Sharon supported gay marriage. Ideologically we were far apart but agreed on the important things in life. The real problems began when my son was going to be baptized. My mom wanted to get our son baptized Catholic and Sharon wanted him baptized Protestant. Lots of snide remarks about Catholics were said, but I let it go at the time. The ex and I decided to wait and let our son decide, which Sharon hated. When my ex started going back to church and I wasn't in attendance, that further widened the divide. Her family would go by Sharon or someone else's house after church for lunch or dinner, and I either showed up later or not at all. Every time Sharon didn't agree with the decision we made as a couple in regard to our lives, especially my son's life, she would start leaning on my wife and pressuring her behind the scenes. We would literally make a decision, and she would go to her mom's house and then come back with a different opinion. The most frustrating part is she stopped trying to talk to me at all. She would literally just call my wife and get her to change her decision. The big fight that led to us moving out was that my son wanted to play soccer and not football, but my wife's family is a huge football family. We agreed for him not to play football because he didn't want to play in our concerns about CTE. My wife comes home one day and does a 180 saying that she signed him up for football. We start arguing and Sharon comes in the house unannounced and joins the conversation, saying we decided it would be good for him. I got pissed and told them Sharon is not my son's parent and my ex shouldn't be so weak when her mom is pressuring her to do something we decided not to do. Then she said the words that sealed the deal, my opinion should matter. I bought the house. I started looking for a new apartment that night and never looked back. So when we talked, and neither of us raised our voices but it wasn't a nice conversation. I started and apologized for calling her a BTCH, and she apologized for trying to keep my son without my permission. She flat out told me she wished my daughter never met me and that I've ruined her family. That her sons have criminal records now, even though one already did, and it's all my fault. She then started crying about not seeing my son and how she lost her only daughter. I told her she was manipulative and used her money to control the family. That she only didn't like me because she couldn't control my decision like her weak-willed family. I also told her she consistently overstepped her boundaries in regard to my child and marriage, and she put her own selfish interest ahead of her daughter's happiness. After spending an hour calling each other jerks in different ways, we ended things in the same place. In the end, I told my ex her mom could see my son because Sharon loves him unconditionally, and he loves her. Call me stupid, but I think family is a big part of your upbringing. My mom isn't around him enough and every child needs a good grandma. The ex said she has been to a few family situations that were hard to avoid: wedding, funeral, Thanksgiving, but she leaves when her brothers come and my son doesn't leave her side. Sharon has seen my son and he has played with his cousin, birthday boy from original story, but she's keeping him from the family for the time being. My son, he's having a hard time with everything. It's not the fight, he thinks we were wrestling. He misses me a lot and cries on some of our phone calls. He's in therapy and all the sessions are about missing his dad and why we can't live together. It's been a few months, and it's slowly getting better, but we ruined his childhood and I take my share of responsibility in that. The cousin, she is my wife's first cousin, but they are more like sisters. Sharon is her aunt by marriage, and she was the first to warn me about the family. She was also eviscerated by the comment sections for having me add to the story. She told me I was out of line for calling Sharon a BTCH, but didn't feel I deserved to get beat up. Likewise, she also grabbed my son when the fight happened and took him away. She was the one who told my son we were wrestling, and she called my wife to come immediately. When Sharon was being handcuffed, the cousin came outside holding my son. I told her to give him to me, but she pointed at my swollen face and asked if she could hold him. I trusted her enough in that situation to care for my son, so I respected her enough to add those details. She didn't deserve the shit comments either. Conclusion: in the end everyone in their family read the original post, but because of divorce and assault cases, no one directly contacted me other than my ex. It wasn't a hit to say the least, but I only care that hit hurt my ex's feelings. I think seeing everything written out from my perspective opened her eyes. Obviously some things were left out and broad strokes were made to explain complex situations. In the end she said I didn't lie, but she thinks I painted her family in a horrible light. We thought about writing a joint update, but we aren't talking enough to make that happen. I told my ex about this post and asked if she wanted to read it before I posted, and she told me to write whatever I want. Nobody won here, we all lost. Relevant comments. Commenter number 1, I understand everything else, but did you really have to abandon your kid? OP, I knew I would get destroyed for this, but abandon is a strong word. I didn't abandon my son, I left for better opportunities in life for both of us. Both mentally and financially. My chosen profession has more opportunities here, I was only there for my wife and child. My career picked up during the pandemic because I could work remotely, but in-office work is becoming mandatory again. I was already going to have to quit or move companies, so the timing was right. Also, my mental health is 10 times better now that I have left the city. For months, I gave my child fake smiles while trying to be a good father. I was a shell of the man I wanted to be. I'm still broken by what's happened, but I'm in a better place mentally, and in the long term, I'll be better financially. Commenter, you left for better opportunities in life for both of us? For you, yes. For him, not really. OP, I was responding to something else you wrote, but saw you responded to this. Your assessment of my situation is understandable. But me working for less money and being constantly unhappy isn't good for my son either. If I could have stayed in state, trust me I would have, but the economy is screwed. I used all my savings to continue paying bills and lived with my parents for free to start over. Maybe I could have found happiness there, but I didn't see it happening. We are co-parenting the best we can.